Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's special City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order. I kindly ask our distinguished clerk, Ms. Kellick, to please take the roll call.
Bowering.
Here.
Furnish.
Here.
Kilberg.
Here.
Kasserad.
Here.
Maliki.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
Palmquist.
Here.
Paschke.
Here.
Reinecke.
Aye. Here.
We have a full council tonight. Without objection by anyone from the City Council, I would like to begin tonight's meeting with some opening remarks to help set the stage for the proceedings. Is there any objection? A very good morning, City Council, representatives of the petitioner, representative of the Historic Preservation Commission, hereinafter referred to as the HPC, ladies and gentlemen present in the chamber, and to everyone tuning in via our public access channels and/or online. Tonight's special City Council meeting is being held for one reason, and one reason only, for this council to consider the appeal made by the petitioner of the HPC's denial of their request for a demolition permit for the structure located at 4 East State Street based on the City Code 10-6-10 and Standard Number 4 therein. The retention of a building, structure, object, improvement, or site is not in the best interest of the majority of the community. That decision was rendered at the HPC's meeting held on December 16, 2025. The petitioner, the owner of the property, exercised their rights to appeal the HPC's ruling on December 16, 2025, on December 17, 2025. And per City Code, Section 10-6-10, filed the appropriate documents to effectuate said appeal to be heard by this council on this evening. City Code 10-6-10 requires the City Council to hear the appeal duly filed within 30 days of receipt. Tonight, January 12, 2026, is well within the City Code requirement. Tonight, the City Council is sitting in a quasi-appellate court capacity and not in its typical legislative capacity. More specifically, and as stated in the outset of my remarks, the Council's only role this evening, its only role, per language of the Resolution 2026-03, is to consider reversing the HPC's December 16, 2025 ruling to deny a demolition permit for the structure at 4 East State Street. In our capacity to consider this appeal, it's instructive to again reiterate that the council, and by extension, all parties present this evening and joining us via public access TV or online, to understand that the entirety of the evidentiary record has already been addressed and adduced effective upon the closing of the public hearing process held by the HPC on December 16, 2025. For the record, said public hearing was opened at the 5-minute and 44-second mark on December 16, 2025, and closed at the 1 hour, 29-minute, and 17-second mark, a total of 84 minutes and 44 seconds in all. Accordingly, no communication received or presentations made after the closing of the public hearing on December 16, 2025 shall be considered evidence related to the council's deliberations this evening. And no evidence may now be introduced or revisited, including any individual fact-finding, presentations, or interviewing of witnesses by the council members throughout the duration of this meeting. All council deliberations must be focused singularly on the record established by the HPC on December 16, 2025, and not on anything outside of that record. Any effort to do otherwise will be ruled out of order. Tonight's meeting will proceed as follows. A motion and second will be requested to put the matter before us and on the floor. The appellant, the owner of the land and structure, will be afforded an opportunity to speak. A representative of the HPC will be afforded an opportunity to speak. The appellant, if they so choose, will be afforded the opportunity to provide closing remarks. The council will deliberate amongst and between themselves. The council is not permitted to cross-examine or request any additional information from either the representative of the petitioner or the HPC during their deliberations. I ask that everyone please the director attention to the phraseology of the agenda item. The question before this council is to consider reversal of the HPC's denial to issue a demolition permit for the landmarked historic structure at 4 East State Street. Therefore, a vote to reverse the decision of the HPC must be cast by an aye vote, and a vote to sustain or affirm the HPC's decision must be cast by a nay vote. For this council to reverse the HPC's December 16, 2025 decision to deny the demolition permit requires at least 7 aye votes from the 10 council members present. Seated to my left and your right is City Attorney Sandak. Mr. Sandak has been granted full authority to interrupt any speaker, as well as any council member as necessary, to ensure that the comments tonight are germane to the singular question before us. The council and I respectfully request the cooperation of everyone in the council chamber to please refrain from any outbursts, sidebar conversations, or any distractions whatsoever. And finally, I ask the City Council to please speak directly, loudly, and clearly into the microphones provided so that everyone here and everyone remotely can benefit from the dialogue. Are there any questions? Alderperson Bowring.
I just wanted to clarify for myself and everyone present, also part of the evidentiary record are all of those written documents that were part of the application,
That's
as well
correct.
as public comments that were submitted and appeared in the record. So-
Appeared in the record prior to and
Right.
prior to the conclusion of
Right.
the HPC's public hearing on the December 16th,
Great. So
2025.
just wanted to clarify, it wasn't
Yep.
just the proceedings at the HPC meeting itself, but
Yeah,
all of those additional
written-
materials.
Those
Okay.
written testimonials, letters, emails, what have you, are part of the official record.
As well
That's-
as the applicant, the
As well as the
petitioner's
application, yep.
application. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? If not, I'm happy to entertain a motion to consider Resolution 2026-03, reversing. You had a question, Alderperson? Consider Resolution 2026-03, reversing the December 16, 2025 determination of the Historic Preservation Commission to deny the demolition of the historic landmark at 4 East State Street in Geneva, Illinois. Motion by Alderperson Marks. Seconded by Alderperson Kosarog. With that, we invite the petitioner to join us at the podium and provide whatever remarks he so chooses. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Patzelt, P-A-T-Z-E-L-T, 77 North First Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. As was briefed to you, just like to give you a little bit of a background of the record. In early December, we submitted the application that was referred to by the chair, and that was subsequent to or after 2 required meetings, or at least 1 required meeting, but there was 2 of those, one in September and then another one in October, and those are pre-application meetings. As part of the record in December 25, we submitted a litany of documents, including plat of survey, written affidavits of the ownership, sketch of the floor plans, as well as the exterior elevations, historic images of the property, a written chain of title of the investigation identifies the prior owners of the property, a detailed report of non-code compliant items within the structure, a detailed list of irreparable and deteriorated building features, a detailed cost estimate to rehabilitate the structure, market values of comparable properties within the same market area of Geneva, a detailed pro forma if it was to become a rental property, and we have provided cash values of the abutting properties immediately adjacent to the property, and then lastly, some narrative as to why the structure could not be relocated and what efforts we had undertaken to potentially relocate it. Also, as part of that application paragraph, as part of the application, there are some 17 different detailed facts as to why the HPC should consider this structure or allow it to be demolished, and that it's not in the best interest of the community. There is numerous pages for those 17. I just would like to briefly highlight 10 of the 17 that were within that documentation. The first one dates back to December of 2017, when the structure was initially landmarked by the Historic Preservation Commission, and with that, there was an application by a non-part of the property owner to do that. The application should have evaluated alongside all factors associated with landmarking the structure, including a condition assessment, economic feasibility, and future uses desired by the community as a whole. And we believe that it did not. In 2019, the City Council passed Resolution 2019-40, authorizing a charrette and entitlement process related to the redevelopment of the former Millrace Inn property. The city, with that ordinance, the City Council, on behalf of its constituents and residents, was requesting the site to be redeveloped. In 2019, as part of that charrette process, there was public input to redevelop the site, and it was that public testimony was received during numerous public meetings and at the charrette process. The charrette team came back and recommended to the City Council a redevelopment plan that included deconstruction and reinterpretation of the historic landmark structure. In July of 2019, the City Council passed Resolution 2019-73, establishing basic development parameters to be used in preparing a redevelopment plan for what was known as the Millrace site. The parameters addressed permitted uses, parking, bulk regulations, public riverfront access, and the historic landmark on the site. However, specifically, relative to the historic landmark, it stated that the historic landmark may be deconstructed and reinterpreted at a nearby location. The site has been identified as what is referred to as Opportunity Site Number 6 in the Downtown Station Area Master Plan, which is a public document and was created after numerous public hearings throughout the city and for various areas within the downtown area of Geneva. The Downtown Station Area Master Plan is intended to guide the direction of change and growth in downtown Geneva over the next 10 to 15 years. The vision for this plan includes goals and supporting objectives to lead the city of Geneva in the direction of implementation. The vision, goals, and objectives are based on the heavy community input and drafting of that plan. Opportunity Site Number 6 at the southwest corner of State and Bennett, the goal and the desire for this newly redeveloped structure reflected a concept that did not include the preservation of any existing structures. The downtown station area master plan went on to talk about proposed structures. The conclusions found, and as a result, again, of the public hearings, when selecting the sites that were underutilized, vacant, and structurally unsound, found that the mill race site was shown to be a new structure. The plan did not reflect the remnant structure remaining. Downtown Station Area Master Plan had a specific section related to historic preservation. That historic preservation section of the document identified specific structures that should remain for preservation purposes. The stone remnant structure was not identified as one of those structures that should remain. The Geneva Fox River Tax Increment Financing District that was created by the City Council after several public hearings and input from the public included redevelopment of vacant or underutilized properties, including specifically potential demolition. The mill race building and former bike shop that sat next to it were two structures photographed in that document as examples that should be considered for demolition. The TIF district included rehabilitation of existing properties as well as possible preservation of architecturally or historically significant buildings. Again, the stone remnant structure was not identified for rehabilitation. It has been 8 years since we first started talking about this structure, and after over 20 public hearings or 20 public meetings, there's been no progress made by either of these parties involved in this site. As a result, residents have been speaking out before the various city council meetings, committee of the whole, Historic Preservation Commission, and as Alderman Bowring mentioned, there was numerous written documents and written requests by residents throughout Geneva. And if you were to take a look at or count up those written documents and looked at them, whether they were in favor of or opposed to demolition, we believe that you would find that over 60% of those documents suggest that the structure should be demolished. So in accordance with the ordinance 10-6-10.B.4, we believe that the Historic Preservation Commission failed to properly evaluate not only the 10 facts that I have pointed out, but all 17 of the facts that were identified in our application. And therefore, we are respectfully requesting that you overturn the HPC's denial and approve the demolition permit for the stone structure. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite the representative of the Historic Preservation Commission to please join us, share your name, and deliver your remarks.
Sure. My name is Paul Zomer. I'm the chairman of the HPC, and I am presenting the commission's decision regarding the application to demolish 4 East State Street, historically known as the Alexander Blacksmith Shop. The scope of our review was that we were it was very limited. We were not asked to reconsider the landmark designation, to enforce the property maintenance violations, or to approve or deny any future development plans. We were solely tasked to evaluate the demolition request under Standard 4 of the city's demolition criteria. The commission considered the staff report for the historical record presented by the city staff, testimony and evidence submitted by the applicant, sworn public testimony both in favor of and opposed to demolition, and questions and discussions by the commissioners during the public hearing. The public hearing was then closed and the commission deliberated based on the record. We did find the following finding of fact. The first one was that 4 East State Street is a designated historic landmark, but the designation was not under review at this time. The application, finding fact number 2, was the applicant sought demolition under Standard 4, asserting the retention of the structure is not the best interests of the community. Number 3 was the testimony that was presented during the public hearing demonstrated a divided public opinion and did not establish an objective or measurable basis to conclude that the majority of the community supports demolition. Number 4 was that the applicant did not present concrete development proposals and demonstrating that demolition is necessary to achieve community benefit, nor did the record establish reasonable alternatives to the demolition had been exhausted. The commission found that the prolonged deterioration of the structure standing alone does not demonstrate that demolition is the best interest of the community, particularly where the concerns of long-term neglect were raised. Number 6, approving the demolition under the circumstance presented would risk establishing precedent inconsistent with the intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. And number 7 is the applicant did not meet the burden required under Standard 4, justifying demolition of a designated landmark. Based on these findings, the commission concluded that the demolition criteria of Standard 4 were not satisfied. A motion to approve the demolition application was made and seconded. The motion failed unanimously by a 7-0 vote. In conclusion, the Historic Preservation Commission acted within its authority, following proper procedures, and rendered a decision supported by the record and the city's adopted standard. The denial of the demolition reflects the Commission's obligation to preserve designated historic landmarks unless the applicant clearly meets the criteria for demolition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Per the process outlined at the beginning of the meeting, we will invite, if the petitioner so chooses, to provide some additional closing remarks.
Try to keep it brief, but I believe that you just heard a statement from the HPC chairman that said that the public testimony and the record was divided. Without any doubt, it was divided. I think what needed to be done by the HPC is weigh how it was divided. And I believe that if they would have given careful consideration of the 17 points that we had identified, in addition, or including the 10 that I highlighted, as well as simply tallying those in favor and those against that either spoke out or that had taken the time as residents to write into the HPC, they would have found that division would have weighed on demolition. So based on that, I believe you have sound basis for overturning the HPC's decision of a denial of the demolition permit. You did hear also that there was no development plan proposed. Our comments have been consistent over the last 8 years, and that is we cannot prepare a development plan knowing whether that structure is going to remain or whether it is going to go. To try to get past that point, I am willing to suggest that we are committed to submitting a redevelopment plan for concept in accordance with the concept application process here in Geneva within 90 days if we are granted a demolition permit. Further, we are also committed to trying to pay homage or pay some legacy or some documentation, visual as well as physical, of the historic remnant structure by reincorporating the stone from the structure into some type of structure, maybe similar to that you may find along 3rd Street as a directory map, using the stone, and on top of it, in lieu of a map, identifying whether it's a brass etched plate or some impregnated steel that would tell the story of the historic blacksmith structure. With that, I thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn the floor over to the city council, I would like to ask city attorney the city attorney to comment just on a couple points. So, Mr. Sandak, whenever you're available.
With respect to the petition, again, your job is to look at the record adduced, whether it was in written form by way of applications, documents produced at the HPC, and obviously the proceedings of the HPC. You sit in quasi-appellate, like a jury, essentially, and you can deliberate amongst yourselves like a jury would, but again, confining yourselves to the record. Reverse, affirm, those are your tasks. Per our city code with respect to this item. If there's a question, obviously direct it to the chair, and if he needs me, I'm happy to opine. Again, I would just strongly suggest that your deliberation be confined to the record adduced. And if you have a question about the record, obviously bring it forward. With respect to the applicant's last comments, I want to make sure we're clear. The determination needs to be made before you decide if there's conditions. Meaning, was item number 4, and you're looking at this de novo, meaning brand new, you can certainly refer to and reflect upon and even defer to the HPC, but you should do so anew, whether the retention of the building, structure, object, improvement, or site is not in the best interests of the majority of the community. It's a somewhat vague and opaque definition, but you are to use your best determination as to what exactly that means is in the best interests of the residents of Geneva as its elected body.
Question by Alderperson Bowring.
So I have a question regarding the finding of fact. Is that part of the record? Because I don't think that we got that in written format. I wasn't able to get down everything that was said, just in my own notes now. But maybe I missed it, but I wasn't able to find it in either our packet for tonight or the, let's
So
see.
you're referring to the HPC's findings of fact?
Right.
And its denial of the request for a
Right.
demolition permit?
Right.
Mr. DeGroot, could you please address that question?
The findings of fact were captured in the draft minutes from the HPC meeting that were posted to the development projects page.
Okay,
I believe
great.
a link was incorporated into the
Yep.
executive summary.
Okay, I think I just must have missed them in the draft minutes.
Alderperson Bowring still has the floor.
Yeah, so just to clarify, okay, so that is part of the, okay, great, thank you very much.
Anyone
That
else, any
concludes my
questions for the
question.
city attorney or myself? If not, the floor is open for deliberations between and amongst the council and the council only. Alderperson Kasserag.
Thank you, Mayor, and I do have some written comments here. I didn't really want to go off the cuff here, but I do offer these comments in deep respect for the Historic Planning Commission and Mr. Zellmer, Chairman Zellmer, that's in the audience tonight. In making this decision, I'm guided by the standards set forth in Geneva City Code, not by personal preference or emotion. I want to recognize that it is an honor and a responsibility to serve on this council and to be entrusted with decisions that affect Geneva's history and future. Under our preservation ordinance, the HPC and Council on Appeal must consider whether a landmark structure retains sufficient historical integrity, whether it can be preserved or reused in a reasonable and economically feasible manner, and whether denial of the demolition would impose an undue hardship or fail to advance the public welfare. Based on the record before us, I find the structure no longer retains the level of integrity contemplated by the code. What remains is a partial remnant that has been significantly altered over time and is no longer functionally or physically connected to that which gave it historic significance. I also find that preservation or adaptive reuse is not reasonably feasible. The evidence shows that rehabilitation will require extraordinary stabilization, substantial cost, and ongoing maintenance without a viable long-term use. The code does not require preservation at any cost, nor does it require maintaining a structure where reuse is impractical and unsupported by the site's current condition. Finally, I've considered the public interest. Allowing demolition, coupled with proper documentation, satisfies the intent of the code by ensuring the site's history is recorded while allowing the property to be returned to productive use in a safe and responsible manner. Therefore, pursuant to 10-6-10.b4 of the Geneva City Code, I find the retention of the subject structure is not in the best interest of the majority of the community. This finding is based on the evidence in the record demonstrating that the structure no longer retains sufficient historic integrity or functional utility to reasonably advance the purposes of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. The structure exists as a partial remnant, has been significantly altered over time, and lacks a viable or sustainable use that would provide a meaningful public benefit. I further find that the continued retention of the structure would impose ongoing safety, maintenance, and economic burdens while preventing the productive use of a prominent site. In contrast, approval of the demolition would allow for redevelopment consistent with community goals, public safety, and responsible land use, while preserving the historical record through documentation and appropriate interpretive measures, as the applicant has agreed to do. Accordingly, I determine the demolition of the structure best serves the public welfare and the long-term interests of the community than continued retention. I want to thank the residents, preservation advocates, and all the members of the public who took the time to provide thoughtful input on the matter. That input was carefully considered and informed my deliberation, even where it did not ultimately change my conclusion. For these reasons, and consistent with the standards and findings required by the Geneva City Code, I am supporting approval of the demolition application. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Anyone else on the dais? Alderperson Bowring.
Thank you, Chair. So I came to a different conclusion than my colleague. I think it takes a lot to overturn ruling by the HPC or the PZC for that matter. So it's something I take pretty seriously. I would note that we have done that in the past, so it is possible. However, I do not see that the petitioner in this case has presented clear and compelling evidence that the community interest is served through demolition. I think a question that remains in my mind and in a lot of minds is, what is next? I think that is part of the consideration of community interest, is understanding what might come in the stead of this historic landmark. And without any ability to understand that, not having any of that information, I am unable to support demolition at this time. I would note.
Alderperson Bowring, I'm going to interrupt for a moment and ask City Attorney Sandak to opine. I believe what I have heard is that there's curiosity in what might come next, whether it be development or redevelopment, et cetera. I believe that is outside the ramparts of our decision-making this evening. If I am wrong, I turn to the city attorney to ask him to correct me.
No, I don't think you're wrong. So if you could confine your comments to the record and why you're not in favor of reversal, I think you were doing that, but you were getting beyond it with, you can't support reversal because you don't know what's next. That's beyond the parameters of your review, essentially.
That seems strange to me, given that I did try to talk over what was permitted and what was not permitted before this, and my understanding was
What's next isn't before you. It's what's here that's before you. Either they made the standard or they didn't. If you found they didn't because the record before you, that's fine. But if you're saying, I can't support it because I don't know what's next, that's a distinction that makes a difference.
well, so I would say that community benefit is a completely subjective standard.
True, I agree with that.
Part of what encompasses community benefit to me is understanding what future uses might be. And just hearing that there's no ability to contemplate any future uses until this building is removed is insufficient for me.
That's fair.
I would further note that, if I'm not mistaken, part of the statute that this refers to, or sorry, part of what Standard 4 refers to in the ability to grant the demolition request of a historic landmark is clear evidence that all other alternatives have been exhausted, and I don't believe that that was demonstrated.
That's a different provision. That was the prior provision in which they moved, and the council before.
Isn't it
you-
part of 10-6-10?
10-6, it is, but that's not the provision under which they moved. They moved under item number 4 only, which was,
But I thought this appears above that,
It
above the
does, but
specific,
they're
not in
standalone.
a specific, okay.
yeah. They're standalone provisions. You're not wrong, that was the petition.
Trying to bring that one up so I could refer to it, and I cannot make numlock go off on my keyboard, which is very small,
Understood.
so I cannot get the computer to show that to me. All right, that aside, I think the HPC took seriously their job of considering this issue. I don't believe that the petitioner presented any substantial evidence to demonstrate community interest one way or another. I think in addition, overturning the HPC in this manner sets a dangerous precedent for the city. We are known for valuing historic preservation. I happen to live in the historic district, as do many of my neighbors. And that means that we are always expected to be contributing to the community benefit when we maintain the homes that we live in, and that comes at a significant cost. I would further note that the petitioner brought into the record discussion of cost effectiveness of maintaining the historic structure, and also brought into the record discussion of the third-party reviews that the HPC undertook in 2022 to 2023. And those present a different take on their conclusion of cost effectiveness. So I think that is also in dispute. I, like everyone else, would agree that I would like to see something happen here. But whether that is a redevelopment that incorporates this historic structure, whether it is a new development, I'm open to all of those possibilities. And I think that what the petitioner mainly demonstrated was that people would like to see something happen here. And I do not dispute that. But that, I think, is not the standard that they needed to demonstrate in order for me to support demolition. I would also note that they have had and continue to have other options available to them to pursue redevelopment of this site. This is not their only path, and I don't think that they need to feel as stuck as they claim to be, absent granting of their demolition request. To me, that winds up feeling like they are holding this important site hostage and saying that if you do not give us this demolition request, we will sit on this site for an indefinite period, which is, I think, not in this community's best interest. And to me, that feels like an inappropriate way of presenting a proposal for collaboration, which is what any development plan is. It's a collaboration between a property owner and the community, a property owner and the city. I understand how complicated the history of this site is. I do not take that lightly. But I also think it's important that we as policymakers not take the short view on this and say, well, we want to see something, so we will, bypass, I think, what is a much more reasonable process for evaluating historic preservation against other interests. And I think that weakens the HPC in the long run and makes it much harder to tell any applicant, frankly, no, you can't put in this type of windows or use that type of siding or change the shape of your house because we're letting a developer do it. I think, I'm contemplating a porch remodel that includes windows that are about a quarter of the cost of the entire project. That feels like a lot to me, but the city has determined that that is part of the community interest, and that is the cost of having something that is not just relegated to a property owner, but that is part of a larger community. I appreciate everyone bearing with me while I opined, and I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the dais? Alderperson Reinecke, the floor is yours.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit and for quite some time, and attempting to take a broad and very open view on this issue. I've read the literature on it, and have heard, as we all have, from many individuals in the community who have been sending notes, letters, emails. And it's worth noting, I'm simply not looking at them as a count, but reading each of them individually and looking at their narratives to try to understand the meaning and the values of the writer, of each of the people in the community. It's taken a while, and I appreciate everyone who has come to me and wanted to talk about it. The door's been open, and I've appreciated it, and I've actually enjoyed it, so many thanks to them. As I'm reflecting on this, it occurs to me that a couple of things came to mind. I wanted to ask a simple question, which is, what can we say with some confidence? What can we all agree on in this particular situation? And I came up with 3 or 4 things. One is that this is a contentious issue. It is. It's got lots of emotion attached to it. It's got lots of angst attached to it. Okay, why is that? It's just an old set of rocks on the side of a river. What's going on? Why this heat over this? And the answer is simple. In social settings, conflict comes when values are put into conflict. And here, 2 of the things that are of core value in our community: development, which is key to the survival and growth of any community, and preservation of our heritage and of our structures and of the nature of Geneva, are being put into conflict with one another. Hence, the contentiousness. Now, the thing that troubles me about this is that they are seen as being against one another rather than as an opportunity for solution-focused thinking and collaboration, and it's been that way for some time. The second thing that we can all agree on, first, is that it's contentious. The second is that this is a landmark. It is. Now, it's in bad shape. We would all agree with that. Doesn't look good, but it is historically important, and it is one of the oldest structures or sets of walls, we'll call it. I won't even call it a building, a set of walls in the city, in the community. And it is then, as a landmark, the range of options for us in demolishing it are narrowed. The natural impulse then is to preserve it, which raises a number of questions. The third thing that we can all agree on is that we're impatient on both, primarily on the development side. All of us would like to see something of value and use placed onto that site, onto that lot, and it's been taking a long time. And I don't think there's anyone who's saying, let's just let it float for a bit. That's not the tone of the community right now. The question then arises, can it be preserved? And this is where I look to the documentary evidence. And in my reading of that, three things. Yes, it can be preserved. It may be, what was your phrase of it, the phrase of the developing company, deconstructed, reinterpreted, reused. Yes, it can. And there's many reasons to think that it can, but it can be preserved. Can it be economically viable? There, too, it can. And can this specific site be preserved and economically viable? And there, in my read of the documentary evidence, and this is going back to the 2022 application, yes, it can. So the notion then that I have is some sort of collaborative middle ground is there's an opportunity here for both, for development and preservation. And with that in mind, I would not support demolition, but I would support, how would you put it, collaborative efforts to reach a space where something not just economically viable, but beautiful and of value to the community that we'll be looking at not we, but the community will look at it 100 years from now and be very pleased with what's been placed on that site. That's the goal that we should have. And I yield, that's it.
Thank you, sir. The floor is open.
Could I raise a point of order?
Point of order, what is your point of order?
I was told upon questioning that 10-6-10, which I believe is the statute or the code we are discussing, that that we're only allowed to look at standard 4. However, very close to the top of this, it states quite clearly, demolition shall be considered only when all other redevelopment options for a building, structure, object, improvement, or site have been exhausted. I don't understand why that's not.
Or, the next word is.
Nope, it's a period at the end of that sentence.
It's not right. It's an or retention. The retention of a building, structure, object, improvement, or site is not in the best interest of the majority of the community.
So is the code that we can see online incorrect then?
I don't know what you're
Okay.
looking at online. I can just tell you what the statute, what the
I'm
ordinance
looking at
says.
what's linked from our website.
Can I,
It's in the ordinance. Am I looking not at the ordinance?
She's in the ordinance.
I'm in
I
the
don't
ordinance. So I don't understand why that's not
The
relevant.
first, there's 4 provisions in that, and the last one is the number 4 is the item that we're talking about. That's the application, that's before you, that's what the
Right,
applicant
so that's
said.
part of the standards, but all the way at the top of this statute, code, I may be using the wrong term.
It's fine, yeah.
Like this, it says demolition shall be considered, I don't see why that doesn't govern all of it.
Because that was the previous petition. This petition
No, no.
is singular, I know, I'm just telling you, it doesn't.
If it helps the alderperson, I can reread the statement I made directly from the code, which is standard 4, which reads, "The retention of a building, structure, object, improvement, or site is not in the best interest of the majority of the community." And that is the standard we are considering tonight.
Right, so they applied in the past under a different standard, which is not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing something that comes very close to the top of the statute in general, and I don't understand why that is not part of this. Perhaps city staff might be able to weigh in on this. But I'm not talking about one of the other standards, I'm talking about like an overarching part of this piece of code.
Alderperson Bowering, all I can tell you is you're looking at 10.6.10. You're looking under items 1 through 4, There is a statement that says demolition shall be considered only when all other redevelopment options for a building structure object improvement have been exhausted. That's a distinct provision from the item number 4 in which the
But
applicant
it's
is.
not a standards. Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay. We're going in circles, so
Yes.
I don't want to take more time, but I respectfully, I do not understand legally how that does not apply to all applications because of where it appears in the statute. So, thank you.
Point of order has been resolved. Anyone who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Otherwise, I will recognize a council member who asks to speak for a second time. Alderperson Malicki?
Go ahead.
Alderperson Palmquist? Malicki, Palmquist. We'll open it again, then we'll go to see Kasserag and Reineke.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, from what I've been hearing tonight and all the in-depth research and reading and that I've been doing, Alderperson Reineke touches on a couple of points that I was going to make about 8 years of contention in the city that this property has been inflicting on us and the residents. And then Alderperson Kasserag also, brought up earlier with his comments the issue that it's completely the appeal being asked is completely subjective, and whatever happens, we're going to have some contention down the road. I don't see that being resolved. What I'm afraid of is the property, and this has been discussed for years. Council did landmark this project, this building for a reason. The votes that have happened since then have happened for a reason and were greatly debated throughout the process before my time. My main concern is overruling HPC basically as a matter of convenience to push things forward. And we have 2 properties on site, not just one, I believe. So in my opinion, for a development plan not to be able to move forward on one property because of what's happening on another property makes me a little concerned. Also, I want to just sneak back that it is a tough area for things to move forward, but to be simple without really going in circles with the way that I communicate, my concern is overruling HPC simply as a matter of convenience really puts our system and our process and what I believe and what I've heard living in Geneva for 20 years is our values that we as a city do value historical preservation. It's been discussed and it's a highlight of our town. And at this point, if voting in favor of the property owner and overruling HPC, I think it puts us in a really tough spot that I'm not willing to take. So when you look at the actual appeal that's in front of us tonight to overrule HPC, I'm not in support of that for those reasons at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Palmquist, then I'll turn back to Kasserag and Reineke for a second time unless someone else wishes to speak for the first time. Alderperson Palmquist, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We are agonizing tonight. I'm going to repeat the first couple of Alderperson Kasserag's comments because I had those. Truly want to thank HPC. I watched that video, I watched it live and then multiple times and thought that meeting was very well conducted and represented the community well. And also thanks for all the residents who contacted me
and for putting up with me when I stopped them on the street and asked them, because I was really reaching out for other opinions that maybe didn't have a dog in the fight and didn't have as much emotional baggage and could help me navigate the pulse of the community. And I can say with clarity, there's no clarity, if that makes any sense. It really is a split opinion of our residents. Getting back to the matter at hand and our judgment tonight, indeed, it is subjective. I will point out to one key phrase in the testimony or on the record from HBC, and an insightful comment spoke to the value of partnerships and collaboration, and we've heard that from a couple of different statements tonight here as well. And I do want to interject, I think we all want some degree of the same thing, whether it's preservation or some kind of recognition. And how do we get there within the constraints of our task tonight? I feel that 8 years is a time that a pattern has been set, and I studied the testimony and application and understand the developer's constraint in reuse, considering the condition of the building and the cost. So I can see a case for best interest. I could support the demolition with the grounded in realism, with the optimism that we will ultimately get at a better place than we would otherwise if we did not.
Alderperson Mayor?
This has been probably the most challenging, well, it's definitely been the most challenging situation that I've dealt with while on council. As someone who grew up here, as somebody that's lived here a substantial portion of my life, and I have siblings that come into town and tell me, you know, what they think about the site, and other friends and neighbors and people telling me adamantly what they want to do with the site, one way or the other. And I agree with Alderperson Palmquist in that there isn't a lot of clarity. There is some clarity, though, in that people definitely want something to happen, and they want us, well, what I've been told is that they'd like City Council and the City of Geneva to excuse themselves and get out of the way of progress from happening. That's, I would say, the majority of the people that come to me via emails, via text messages, via personal phone calls. That's the read I have on it, is that they don't really care much about what's standing in the way. They just want something to happen. That puts us all in a horrible position, because we know that there's not anything been offered to clearly define what will happen with this structure if it's demolished. And any of the things that Mr. Patzelt said about, you know, offering a memorial or reconstructing those things, and that they would come forward with a development plan within 90 days, are not formally entered into the record here, and we have no enforceability of that. So I genuinely believe that this structure will be costly to reuse, to adaptively reuse. I think that the Shodine Corporation has done quite a bit of this over the years in Geneva. I've personally watched, the buildings along the river be saved and preserved into other developments, and other buildings around town be reused in this manner. This one is definitely in, as evidenced in the record, very poor condition, and likely cost prohibitive, but that there has been a lot of very high-quality arguments made to preserve, and very high-quality work done by people in our community to make a case for preserving or for reusing or for offering some museum or all different things. That being said, is there a way that I can enter condition of the approval by amending the motion on the floor?
The motion before this council is to reverse. So if there were a motion to reverse subject to the gentleman's comments, and I don't have the exact words, so I need to go back and look at my notes, but the comments were some type of homage or legacy marker, and not to demolish until 90 days with a plan, concept plan, given to our Director of Community Development. I can put that language together, but if you wanted to make that motion, that would be a proper motion.
I would like to make that motion, but first I'd like some clarification about the 90-day. What enforcement option would we have if, let's say, there is a concept plan brought in that didn't work, that was ridiculous? What happens then? How do we put a standard on that to be able to?
You can't put a standard on it, other than you would defer to the Director of Community Development's discretion, because no demolition permit would issue until signed off on by staff.
So the concept plan, assuming
A
the
reasonable
concept
concept
plan would
plan.
be signed off by staff, an administrative approval?
No, a concept plan has been done multiple times before this body, and oftentimes in partnership with the Planning and Zoning Commission, includes a concept plan that is submitted for review by professional staff, and then traditionally, a scheduled hearing before either the Planning and Zoning Commission and/or the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council for either a sounding of, okay, I like what I see, need some tweaking perhaps, but generally speaking, we're comfortable. And therefore, the developer, whether it be this developer or any developer, has not invested substantial amounts of money, has taken that public comment back, and then submits a redevelopment plan with all the i's dotted and t's crossed, whether it be engineering, whether it be landscaping, height, mass, etc. But the concept plan allows for a more organic conversation about what I see in front of me seems to do the trick. I might have some objections, but you're on the right path.
But there wouldn't be an approval or any sort
No.
of nod to
Correct.
say, okay, now you can demolish the structure?
No, I think.
What would be the limitation on the demolition of the structure as part of that condition?
There would be none.
I think it would just be the good faith
Right.
Associated with the concept, which you can take to mean much, some, or nothing, but it's certainly better than without any type of condition, I would think.
Okay, I move to put the conditions as offered by the developer regarding the remnant stone sculpture being made available for a memorial of some sort, and that a concept plan would be delivered to city staff within 90 days of this meeting.
Is that the condition of the
That-
demolition?
That is a condition to the approval of the demolition.
And would you
That written?
concur with this language, because I tried my best to jot down what the appellant stated. A conceptual redevelopment plan in conceptual stage will be submitted within 90 days, and the developer agrees to pay homage to, both physically and visually, the history of the Alexander Blacksmith Shop located at 4 East State Street.
That can be the motion. We can talk about that.
Comfortable? Okay.
Okay.
Is there a
Thank you.
second to that amendment?
I'll second.
Seconded by
Furnish.
Furnish. On the floor, ladies and gentlemen, is the amendment to the motion. Is there questions regarding that amendment? Maliki Bowry.
Amendment or not, the things that I see that we have clarity on are, back to the original motion, is that we're gonna either vote to deny or approve, overrule or with HPC or agree with HPC. And our decision's gonna also basically let the blacksmith shop stay, or it's gonna get demoed. So that's what I see with clarity. As far as, and please stop me if I go out of bounds or whatnot, what I see here is the amendment with the motion, asking for a concept plan, asking for a promise to, have a memorial or whatnot. That was already discussed and done years ago, in my opinion, and the city rejected that. That was part of a plan in 2020. So I don't see anything concrete, that gives me any room to support that at this point. Because again, it's wishful thinking, and it goes back to what's gonna actually happen. Our vote's gonna, get rid of the blacksmith shop and overturn precedent with HPC and what they've been doing for years, which is gonna put things into a pretty difficult situation, I think, moving forward for the city when it comes to further protections and preservation. So I would say that I don't agree with the motion.
The amendment.
The amendment, I would not support it.
Excuse me. Alderperson Bowry, on the amendment and the amendment only?
Has anything prevented the applicant from bringing forward a concept plan similar to that referenced in this amendment during the last 8 years?
I'm going to lean on the city attorney to how properly address that question. I think the short answer is, when you heard from the appellant, there has not been, but I don't know if that's germane. That's what the short answer is no, they have not.
So, to
submitted.
me, if we're amending the motion to include this as a requirement, I'm curious whether or not the applicant would be able to pursue this separate from this proceeding. I don't see how that's not relevant, that's not germane to the decision-making. If this is their only opportunity to pursue a plan like this, that's one thing.
Okay.
If they have always had and would have tomorrow, regardless of the decision made tonight, the option to pursue a concept plan and a promise to do whatever tribute thing they're proposing, that is a different situation. So I'm asking, is this something confined to this proceeding somehow? Or is this an option that actually any applicant has or any property owner has at any time to work with the city?
Again, I'll lean on City Attorney Sandak to correct me, but I believe that the applicant, the appellant, the petitioner, has offered this opportunity to advance consideration by this council to reverse, and has added this language as an incentive to perhaps
So
clarify.
now I feel like we're going beyond the bounds of what we are allowed to consider. We were told very clearly that we are not allowed to consider demolition we're allowed to, I understand we're allowed to amend, but the way you were just characterizing it, if this is an incentive, then that's trying to persuade us that demolition is a good idea in this case. And I
Alderperson
think
Bowering,
that's
as
not
stated in
allowed.
my memorandum to the city council, or in fact tonight and with discussions with multiple council members, should the applicant provide additional information tonight in his rebuttal remarks, we can consider those. We can't go into detail asking for specifics regarding those. I think that's very clear. But
I
it's
don't think so. I think what you said, and I just want to come into the meeting understanding what to expect. We were told, and in fact, I spoke with Attorney Sandick this afternoon. He, I thought, made it very clear to me that what I was allowed to consider was everything in the record, which is up to and including everything that happened verbally or in writing as part of the proceeding at HPC. But that when the public hearing was concluded, and then that we are allowed to listen to and take into account the HPC's deliberation and their conclusions, but that anything said tonight should not materially affect whether or not we think demolition itself should happen. Yes, we're allowed to attach amendments, but I feel very concerned that calling this an incentive
Well,
is.
if I misspoke, I will extend to you and everybody else in the room my deepest apology. But the reality is, I believe that was offered as well, I'm not going to say it again, but.
I'd advise you not to, because I think that
I am so
jeopardizes.
advised. I am so advised.
So let me be clear. In your analysis, those in favor of reversing should do so based on the record, exclusively. Given what's been offered by the applicant, if an amendment wishes to be made, that's fair game. However, decisions should be made to reverse or affirm within the confines of the record.
I feel like that's gotten really muddied at this point, to be really honest. Like, I don't think that's a fair expectation of anyone on this council.
I do.
Okay, great.
I think that's your job,
I
unfortunately.
think having it presented as an incentive means that that's part of the calculus now, and it may have been an unfortunate choice of words, but I think, so to me, having that as an incentive is inappropriate, because we're supposed to consider what was presented in the record. And this amendment is putting conditions on it, but I can't support it because I don't support demolition, because I don't think they proved their case. I would further like to point out that, to me, the only reason to link these two is to make them finally submitting anything to the city an incentive for us to clear the way for them to demolish, which again, to me, is them holding this property hostage. And I think that's not a good beginning to a collaborative relationship. I am absolutely eager. I stated at the last proceedings related to this that I looked forward to working with them. I am excited to review any and all proposals that come before this body. Development and redevelopment are things I feel are very important to the city. That being said, I'm not interested in circumventing our processes, and to me, this is starting to feel like a runaround. That rather than pursuing the process, which they could at any time over these last 8 years have done, they are now trying to essentially sweeten the pot for demolition by suggesting that they will finally give a proposal. And to me, that does not feel right. So I understand I may be in the majority amongst my colleagues, but I think that's a pretty slippery slope as well. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Who was next? On the amendment? Only on the amendment. Alderperson Kasserag? Or was it?
Go ahead.
Larry? Kasserag? On the amendment only?
This is the only reason I was going to ask to speak a second time earlier was to offer these amendments, so thank you, Amy, for doing that. I just want to say I support it. I really don't agree with Alderperson Bowering here getting upset. I'm happy to hear that there's another proposal on the way. Should we do this? I think that's good news. This is not circumventing our own processes. These processes are in our code. We're not doing anything illegal tonight. We have a lawyer here making sure everything goes smoothly. And if you couldn't take into consideration what they were saying tonight, why would they do the debate between the HPC and the appellant in the first place? That must have, I mean, it wasn't just a performance. They were informing us of what they wanted to make here.
To the chair, please? To me. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to. And I just wanted to say to Alderman Malecki that, you know, I think the charrette is old news. And I think we're in a different spot now. I personally want to put that behind us and move on. So it's with faith that that I offer, you know, my vote, as I indicated earlier, and with these conditions. So I just think it's good news. I don't see why there's any problem, but if you're not going to vote for it, then the amendments wouldn't matter. I agree. Thank you.
Question on the amendment, you don't have the floor. On the amendment, the next person recognized is Alderperson Paschke. You need the floor, you need the floor to call the question. Alderperson Paschke?
Thank you. This is definitely not easy.
And on the amendment?
Agree with Alderperson Mayor that this has been incredibly difficult. I really want to support the amendment, but I just can't based on the evidence before us. Unfortunately, I think Alderperson Bowering is correct that, you know, if this is, you know, an honest offer from the petitioner that these conditions are based on, they have the opportunity to do that anytime. And I don't feel comfortable making that a condition tonight, so, sorry.
Anyone else on the amendment? Ladies and gentlemen, an amendment, Alderperson
I was just going to
Palmquist.
offer my support for that amendment. I think Amy filled in some of the blanks that I was trying to articulate, but wasn't sure procedurally how far I could go, so I appreciate that clarification.
An amendment, ladies and gentlemen, only has to pass by a simple majority. So 6 of the 10 council members. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment offered by Alderperson Mayor and seconded by Alderperson Furnish? An aye vote supports the amendment, a nay vote does not. With that, the city clerk will take the roll.
Mayor?
Aye.
Palmquist?
Aye.
Paschke?
Nay.
Reinecke?
Nay.
Bowering?
Nay.
Furnish?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kussrog?
Aye.
Malecki?
Nay.
Marks?
Aye.
The ayes are 6, the nays are 4. The amendment has been passed. We are back to discussion regarding the main motion as amended. Floor is open to any council member. Alderperson Kilberg?
I don't have a lot to say. I guess, having been involved with this process really over several years, almost over a decade, if you look at the point in time when the Shodines acquired the property, I think we've reached a point in time here in the community that we need to find some compromise and a path forward. As it relates to the HPC, I appreciate their work. I think they complied with the process that they were given. But after 8 years, we're not making any progress. And I think that contributes to the pushback from the community that something needs to be done, that's a responsibility now that falls upon us. You know, over the holidays, I watched the film It's a Wonderful Life. And that film, there was a gentleman that we all grew to despise, and we all know who that is. And I think sometimes here in Geneva, we try to create a Mr. Potter, when really, if we look at the history here in Geneva, I think there's a lot of things that have been accomplished as it relates to preservation. I think if we look at Riverside, if we look at the Harrington, if we look at Dotson Place, if we look at their offices on 31, there's any number of projects that demonstrate an appreciation of preservation. And I think that they would probably be the first if this structure had economic value to them, and if they appreciated some sense of historic value, and a point in time where they see that there's a preservation that can really create something that can be appreciated by the community, I think that they would have been very inclined to reconstruct and do something with the structure. There's another element. I like movies and I like music, and probably most of you don't go back to 1968, but the Chamber Brothers released a top 10 song in 1968 called "The Time Has Come." And I think it was a call to action, and it wasn't about economic development, but it was about another issue that was taking place in our country in the late 60s. But I think as Alderman Kasserag summarized, I think the time has come. I agree with most of what he shared, and rather than to go on and repeat what he shared, I'm in agreement, and I will be supporting the motion that's before us now with the amendment. Thank you.
Discussion, deliberation ensues on the main motion as amended. Anyone else? Alderperson Paschke?
This is just the main motion as amended,
That's correct.
but I can speak to the main motion.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I want to thank the HPC for their work again. I watched the meeting twice, read through everything. I just don't see enough supporting evidence to demonstrate that retention is not in the best interests of the community. It's not under question whether this is a designated historic landmark. This isn't a question of de-designation before us. And I think that it sets a bad precedent, which the HPC pointed out. It sets a bad precedent to demolish a designated historic structure for nothing. I did appreciate the petitioner's comments tonight. However, I don't think that loose conditions being put on it, not knowing what this could look like, could come back and bite us later if we've already granted demolition, which is something that we can do in the future when an actual proposal is, or a concept plan is before us. So unfortunately, I cannot support, as much as I'd like to see things go forward, I can't support reversing the HPC.
Anyone else on the main motion? Alderperson Mayor. The main motion as amended, excuse me.
I have a sense that it's probably not going to pass, that we get demolition approved here tonight, and then we'll be back into a stalemate, and we might go into a period of time when nobody can say anything about this project or what we think. So I'm going to talk about why even the conditions that were put on it weren't quite enough to make me feel good about this approval, and and just to voice that we really do want something to happen here. We don't want to stand in the way of this, and I think that if the charrette were to come back before us, there would be much more cooperative vote at this time based on what we're hearing here tonight. So I really hope that this doesn't cause the proverbial board game to get tossed in the air and walked away from, and that the petitioner and the appellate here will try to work with us to get to a solution here. It's not the case that nothing can happen because there's no approval in place for the demolition. I think everybody here would like to see this move forward and get done. So that's all I have to say about it. I think we should probably wrap it up and vote.
Anyone else? That is not a formal motion to call the question, therefore it won't be considered. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Alderperson Reinecke, then Alderperson Bowring.
If I could, I wanted to add an addendum, a brief addendum to my previous comments. And this is in thinking about the nature of the decision, that our decision is narrowly focused on what is in the best interests of the majority of the community. And what we're seeing is that there's a contest of values, and there is a great deal of division in the community because people value things at different levels. It's true. With that in mind, I think this notion of adaptive reuse, reconstruction, using incorporation of the walls of the building into new construction offers a path forward where both the development and preservation are acknowledged and respected. It really doesn't have to be either or. And that's what I would advocate. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Bowring.
I'd like to call the question.
Alderperson Bowring had the floor. She calls the question. Is there a second to call the question?
I didn't realize anyone else wanted to speak. We've not heard from Alderperson Marks.
Do you wish to
so
withdraw the request?
I'm happy to withdraw it if Alderperson Marks would like to
Alderperson
speak.
Marks?
I guess I'm going to reiterate, thanks to the HPC for all the work they've done. I've been here since the beginning of this, through the charrette, through multiple plans, starts and stops. It's been a struggle for the community. It's been a struggle for the developer. It's been a struggle for the staff. It's been a struggle for the council since then. It's in my mind, it's very hard to see some practical reuse of the building as it stands now. I have to agree with Alderperson Kosarog that, it's gotten so many variations to it. It's not really what it was when it was built. It doesn't even have the mill anymore. It's not even close to the river anymore to run anymore. It's not a building. It's a structure, 3 walls that is just holding together. And so I'm kind of more to the point of, I think it is in the best interest of the city to move forward and to demolish it and start working, because I don't see what waiting for is going to get us anymore, because as we wait, it's not going to change the status of that building and the point of that it's not the original building. If that was the original building and it was maintained and it could be seen as some type of an original building, I would be totally different on this. And I have voted to keep the building up every time. But at this point, looking at it, going through what's best for the city and the citizens of the city, it just doesn't look like what it did back in the 1800s and all of the iterations it's had. It was buried inside a building for years. And it was a nice wall in the Mulrace Inn, don't get me wrong. It was. It was a very nice wall. But it's just not there anymore. And to just keep a structure that no one knows really how to use or what to do with just isn't in the best interest of the city anymore, in my opinion. So I, even though probably it will not pass, will be voting to actually reverse the HPC decision. Thank you.
Before I recognize Alderperson Bowring a second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Alderperson Bowring, the floor is yours.
Now I'd like to call the question.
The question's been called. Is there a second to call on the question?
Second.
Seconded by Marks. Simple majority vote is needed to call the question, which ends all deliberations. City Clerk, on the call to question.
Bowring,
Aye.
Furnish,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kussarog,
Nay.
Maliki,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye. This is to call the question.
This is to call the question.
Yes, just to call the
Yes.
question.
Aye.
Palmquist,
Aye.
Paschke. Aye. Reinecke.
Aye.
9 votes in favor of calling the question, 1 vote opposed to calling the question.
Mr. Chair,
Point of order. Yes, sir.
would you clarify that again? This was just to call the question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, the question was called, it was seconded. The vote is 9 in favor of calling the question, 1 opposed to calling the question. Therefore, the question has been called. No additional debate or deliberations can ensue. We will go to the main motion as amended for a final vote. City Clerk?
Remember what the votes are.
Remember, an aye vote is to reverse the HPC's decision, a nay vote is to affirm or sustain that decision.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Palmquist,
Aye.
Paschke,
Nay.
Reinecke,
Nay.
Bowering,
Nay.
Furnish,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kussarog,
Aye.
Maliki.
Nay.
The ayes are 6, the nays are 4. The minimum required to reverse the HPC is 7. Therefore, the motion has failed. We jump to item 3, folks, public comment. Is there any public comment from anyone joining us this evening on any topic you wish to address? This is your chance to speak, our chance to listen. There'll be no debate, there will be no discussion. I kindly ask that those comments be provided with all due respect to others who may wish to speak. Therefore, keep your comments succinct as possible. Mr. Easton, how are you?
Yes, very good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good.
I will be succinct, very brief, in fact. My name is Chris Aston. I live at 714 James Street in downtown Geneva, where I've owned property and lived since 2004. And I just have a question. I'm almost embarrassed to ask, but there has been some change over recent periods. Who is the alderman for Ward Number 1?
You have 2 alderpersons, Alderperson Maliki and myself.
Duly noted, thank you.
Anyone else? Sensing none, seeing none. Yes, sir.
Most of you have suffered under me before. So the name's Lee Esterlid. I live in 108 Oak Street, directly across the building. My big question would be, why have the fines, I believe it's over $300,000, not been enforced when it was enforced, when a judge said they had been in violation of the law? Why has the city allowed them not to pay? And when I was at the HBC, when they were asked about it, he shrugged. And so I don't understand why, if I don't do something with my property, I get fined, but they don't. And what should I take away from that?
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? The floor is open. Otherwise, we'll jump into new business from members of the council. Ladies and gentlemen, the council, new business. City Attorney Sandak.
So I wanted to make sure there was some clarity. Your question about the ordinance was a good one. That general provision is found in, frankly, an inapplicable spot. It's not beneath the specific provision for demolition. What that means is, it's a general concept versus a specific one. Rules of construction generally favor specific provisions. What you pointed out, though, requires clarification and clarity. There are a bunch of spots in our ordinances, because they have been compiled, amended, changed over many years, needs some cleanup. So your point was a very good one, it's just in the wrong spot.
Okay, thanks.
Any other new business from the dais? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this special city council meeting.
So moved.
The motion has been made by, who the heck was that?
Surprise, right?
Ooh, we're gonna give it to Cossarog anyways. What the hell? All in favor of adjourning the special city council meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Anyone opposed?
No, you don't.
The meeting is concluded.